I cannot understand why they would want Mason Mount to leave the football club. But there is a narrative in football that people who are not Chelsea fans, people that don't value Mason Mount, that he is someone that is surplus to requirements. But doesn't the fact that Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal are all sniffing around him show just how much of a quality player he is? Where do you stand on his abilities?
I think he's a very talented young man. Whether he's top level yet, I don't really know, to be honest. I'd like to see. It'd be very interesting. Maybe it would be the making of him to leave Chelsea and arrive somewhere else to prove that.
Would he be more appreciated if he
left? I think perhaps he would be.
Club?
I think he's. There's been so many diamonds in the Chelsea team, and you look and you feel, who's the most important player? Who's the one player? Now, Mason Mount was injured for a spell this year.
Quite a lot of the season, actually.
And you look at the results, and maybe it's just he's the player they need most of all, if you look at some of the results since he's been injured. But no, I think he's definitely a top-level player. He plays in a midfield three that's his best role, to be one on either side of a sitter, where he can break forward and show that quality he has. He presses really well, so he's high energy. I'm really surprised they're looking to lose a player.
European Championship semi-finalist, a World Cup quarter-finalist, a Champions League winner, and the man who created the goal for Kai Havertz in the final. Why is he not top level, and what does he need to do to get there?
Well, again, maybe it's perception. I just feel that, when you've got so many good players around you and you look in that Chelsea situation, is he the one? Is he good enough, really, or is he the standout player? Maybe other people are feeling that way. Maybe Chelsea are. But I think the interest that's involved in him underlines that people value what he does.
Well, I think Mason Mount
would you sell him?
I think Mason Mount is a side issue. If my manager wanted me to sell him, yes, I would. If my manager wanted to keep him, then no, I wouldn't.
Well, Mauricio Pochettino, actually, when he first took the job, as far as I understand it, tried to engineer Chelsea to start negotiations to try and get him to stay.
Well, I think they've been having negotiations. I just think they were at different levels in terms of where the player wants to be. I've had this conversation with Danny on a number of occasions, because I know Tottenham are interested in the player, but the player's demands are at a level that would deter Tottenham from being involved. But the point I look at with Chelsea is Mason Mount is not going to determine whether Chelsea are going to be a side that's capable of competing for the Premier League next year. He'll be a good part of it, and if they don't think that he isn't that they require him, then Chelsea will not have an embarrassment of problems about who they're going to replace him with or who they're prepared to spend money on.
No, but it's embarrassing, though, isn't it?
Well, why is it embarrassing?
It's embarrassing.
This is a club that had spent so much money on their academy, have invested hundreds of £1 million in their academy, and then they're going to sell this summer Callum Hudson-Odoi, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Trevor Chalobah, Conor Gallagher, Mason Mount, who's the poster boy for that.
Why as a young man should I sign for Chelsea if they're going to get rid of him?
First and foremost, we've got to stop worrying about what looks are, because the optics of the world are so many times through the eyes of people that aren't really invested in the subject matter or understand what they're looking at.
Not great motivation for people in the academy itself.
It's not just a look, though, is it? Because he's actually been successful, hasn't he?
Ultimately, Chelsea's main function is to win football matches, and if they believe they can win it with their academy players and players that have come through their academy, then they'll do that. If they don't, then they'll change direction, and Pochettino will be at the centre of that. Pochettino's decision-making process. We've seen Ruben Loftus-Cheek fall away. We've seen Callum Hudson-Odoi being constantly criticised by people like Thomas Tuchel. So we're going to bring this into the conversation. Let's bring them in properly, right? And if that means...
Reece James then has done well, hasn't he?
And Reece James, I'm very much doubt Reece James will be going anywhere.
Well, let's bring him in. Let's do it properly and bring him in.
And I'm sure he will be. But the point is, we're making about players that are being disposed of, not players that are retained, right? So in the instance of this situation, of course you want your conveyor belt. Once upon a time, Man United used to make a load of money out of putting players into their first team from their academy and selling them because it was a good business model. But the scenario here now is we're talking about what are Chelsea going to have to do to be competitive again. Well, they've made the first decision, which is get a manager that's capable of operating at a very competitive level. He will sort the wheat from the chaff.